So I have a question, right? We just talked about ad blocking, talked about viewability. As a programmatic media buyer myself, I already have an issue finding the right audience using viewability standards as they are defined now at 50%. Because there's only about 56% of the inventory in the US that actually meets that guideline. So now you add ad blocking, and that means that we're getting less inventory. How do we solve this for all of us and make sure the consumer is being targeted correctly, and we're not paying most of our attention to very important definitions of fraud and quality, but maybe ignoring the audience by doing so? Who'd like to take that first?
Thank you. So as George referenced earlier in his presentation, viewability needs to extrapolate out highly sophisticated fraud before it's calculated. Otherwise, and I've seen countless instances of this, bots, for example, tend to have higher viewability rates than standard media. So that's at the heart of it, right? If you're getting to the heart of the viewable impressions, my opinion is that the market has to move on to start looking at the engagement metrics that viewability delivers, right? I had a very interesting conversation with a very large advertiser who'd looked into this very heavily, and he wasn't really remotely bothered about his viewability rates. What he was actually bothered about was the tipping point and understanding the tipping point of what dwell time, retention time, and exposure to the ad means for conversion metrics. And I think that is going to be driving the prices that publishers charge for it. It's going to be driving the prices that the market will be prepared to pay for it. And it's by getting back to that point that I made earlier in my presentation about qualifying the traffic that is doing the work. The data that's now available and the evolution of the verification market, which I'm so heavily involved in, I think it's going to be integral to doing that. And blocking is another component, as you mentioned. But if you're incorporating ad blocking, actual viewed rates, and dwell time, I think the data is going to start to command both the effectiveness and the prices that the market will be prepared to pay for.
I think Duncan, you've got it right on. The only metric that really, we talk a lot about different metrics here, the only metric that really matters is, did I move Cheetos off of shelves? And if we can prove, everything else is subsidiary to that. So if we can show that viewability, if dwell time, if these other pieces actually drive that piece of effectiveness, then that simplifies things. I think your question about ad blocking is interesting to me because I think it's a little bit different than the other things that we talk about. Everything else that we've talked about so far are about measuring and executing an ad ecosystem that marketers and publishers can talk about between themselves. The thing about ad blocking is that it is the consumer entering into that conversation saying, I have an issue with this content, I have an issue with the way I'm being treated in this transaction, or I found a way to make my voice heard. And there is not simply a technical or a technological solution to that. There's got to be an ecosystem and a content-driven solution to that as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think ad block, it's a new thing, and understanding of what the consequences are for ad blocking and the reaction from publishers is still to come, and it has impact in programmatic. The fact is, some publishers are blocking content when an ad block is detected, and when that happens, the numbers drop, of course. But if that drop is reflected in terms of less reach, that means it's not going to show well for him in programmatic tools because his position in the ranking is going to drop. His reach is going to drop. But reality for the buyers, for the agencies and advertisers, is that that reach was never really reachable. And so those guys that do not take care of ad block in their websites will continue to show on top rankings, be more used, but the fact is, however much you use that website, you're not going to get the reach that the analytics indicate because some of the users are blocking ads. So this kind of consequences, I think, are going to to be, I mean, seen in the future. I don't know if Joe has something to add.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think the targeting is impacted as well, because if there's ad blocking going on that's undetected, you're not getting the audience that you think you are in the extent. So I think publishers are taking notice. They're making pages lighter. They're really trying to make a better experience, because once a consumer decides to install an ad blocker, it applies to every site, not just that one site that they go to, unless they go ahead and whitelist it in most cases. So I think it's really important that the publishers lead this initiative, and at the same time, the ad tech and the ads that are served there also need to be light and correspondingly make a good experience for the visitor to the website.
We talked about this earlier, and you mentioned publishers making it better to avoid the ad blocking that's happening. But if the programmatic ecosystem is working correctly and you're using the data behaviorally rather than demographics or by publisher and doing whitelists or blacklists, then I'm still going to find that audience. It's just there's going to be less of it, right?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that you know, there'll be less to get, and therefore it'll be more expensive to get them, right?
And the publishers who aren't figuring it out will then never get any traffic. So,
Essentially, yes.
So guys, things have changed a lot in the last couple of years, particularly in the mobile space. And I know that both you guys have experienced tremendous change in your pivoting in the business. You know, comScore started off pure market research and has really started moving into much more of the digital side and playing more on the ad tech. Tubemogul, you started off in the ad tech, and I'd like to know, particularly from you guys, how things have changed, and then obviously you guys, the fact that you're measuring ad blocking already, and I'd like to understand how that's evolved also. And maybe we'll start with these guys first, since you started first last time, Duncan.
Well, I think that as publishers who are our clients and our members, as they see the need, they need to understand the reaction to the different things that they're putting in place to deal with ad blockers. And so the very first thing they need to do is understand the rate and understand how that change happens. So as we audit sites, we're really kind of providing this information as an add-on to their audit, because we're in there anyways, we're looking at the traffic. So it's a real benefit for them to have that.
And I think also for the industry, the way ad block is being dealt with is as an industry. We have IABs in Europe, in the US, in Brazil too, making recommendations of what to do. And I think that, I mean, helps them as I said, as a thermometer. They are the physicians. They're going to recommend a therapy. We're just going to measure the temperature body and maybe do some more research to see, I mean, how would compare two websites, one with high ad block and the other one with low ad block? Is that because of the audience that's less geek, or is it because the experience there is better, there's lower ads? This kind of stuff I think is going to be dig in the near future.
Right, yeah, and so to your point, Lauren, you know, Tubemogul really came up as a video company, but now that encompasses really all the screens that a consumer might get to. So there's connected TV, there's programmatic television, there's addressable television, there's digital out of home. All these different pieces have come together for us and really shifted the way that we serve advertisers and give them a bunch of brand opportunities. And I think this actually addresses one of the points you made earlier, which is that you know, as we get these other metrics, ad blocking, viewability, all these other pieces really come from the digital side of the house. And one thing that's going to really be a pressure into our ecosystem is going to be as things like programmatic television and cross-screen planning become more available and more widely used. Because if you can't get to somebody because they're ad blocked, maybe you have an opportunity to get to them on a television screen where there isn't an ad blocking opportunity. And so you're going to see advertisers start to shift between those screens, and hopefully that signal will get through to everybody else in the ecosystem and the publishers and start to have those pieces harmonized.
Yeah, so I mean, from my perspective, obviously running the advertising products at comScore, you know, there's so much evolution going on, whether it's cross-media. If you saw the presentation we had on the first day about what we're doing with Kantar, and we've recently bought Rentrack in the US, whether it is uplift surveys, looking at the results, brand lift, offline sales lift. You know, at its heart, all of these evolutions are great, but if you don't understand the traffic within that that's doing the work, you're going to make bad decisions, right? And I think for me, the importance of this is it qualifies how successful the changes in the market actually are, and how you, as a media buyer or an advertiser, can most effectively reach it, because it's all very well and good, no matter how sophisticated the targeting, whatever the platform, it's actually the deliverables that make the difference. And if you start to do your attribution based on that, as opposed to the gross, you know, and if you look at the way, and I think crucial to this is if the market is going to move away from the traditional buying metrics of gross impressions over the next year to 18 months to start to pay for viewability, and buying and paying for the quality of that viewability, this data is absolutely integral to powering what efficiencies and what prices can be commanded in the marketplace.
I entirely agree with that. We have 1 minute left for audience questions. Anyone? Gilad.
Thank you. Recently, a company called Shine signed an agreement with Tree from the UK, and they're providing ad blocking at the operator level. What is your stand for that?
So did you hear that? Sorry, it's hard. It's actually very hard to hear that question. You were saying that can you repeat?
So, once again, there's a company called Shine that's recently signed an agreement with Tree from the UK, and they're providing ad blocker at the operator level. What would be the stand for that?
So how do we deal with ad blocking at the operator level?
Well, I think, I don't know. I mean, the detection in the end captures if it is being displayed or not. So if that blocking happens at the browser level or at the operating systems level, or at the web, a VPN, or a service provider, that's going to show. That's going to show. And I think there's also another point which is important, and that's more in the ecosystem, maybe not related to programmatic, is ad substitution. I mean, the ad is being blocked for those serving, but somebody else is going to take that position and hijack it.
And we're out of time. Thank you, guys.